Okay, my name is Madison Swope, and this is the second portion to my project for Mr. Bruff's History 132 class. I chose Randy Coleman, who was a Navy veteran from the Vietnam War, so that is the war that I will be speaking about today. So the first little bit of my presentation is about the topics that I looked up. One of the ones that I wanted to know a little bit more about is how the war affected not just people, because obviously, it affected people, but also how it affected the U.S. as a whole. So as a whole, the U.S. was affected because inflation was blown up. The president at the time, I can't remember who, he didn't want to tax everyone and make the war, cost more for the people, so he just made inflation a huge thing, and it ended up being way worse than any tax could have been. It caused the U.S., who had tried to build up this level of internationalism and, this mercantilist trading system, and it pretty much destroyed it because the U.S. was like, why are we even trading internationally if all we were going to do is fight, and all we're going to do is try to go over there and take over their country? So people started questioning that and saying, what's the point? And so it made it look really pointless and really stupid. Another thing that the war did was it split the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party had started to grow and it was starting to prosper, just like the U.S. government and the economy, and it made citizens doubt their country because they were like, what are you people doing? Why are we fighting so much? What are we even fighting for? Another topic that I looked up was the psychological side of things. I like to know how it affects people, not just the country. I like the people side. And one of the biggest things that I found through my research, and the one that stuck out to me, was PTSD. And obviously most soldiers that go off to war, they come back with PTSD, but I didn't realize that the Vietnam War didn't have that many. It only had about 19% of the soldiers that came home had PTSD. So they would come home, and as you either saw already or you will see in the interview, Randy stated, you came home and life was normal. Life was completely normal and you just acted as though nothing happened. And that's how it was for them. So PTSD wasn't really an issue back then because they really didn't, face issues such as we. But I do believe that it would have been a little higher had there been more research done on it. So my expectations and experiences with this interview, my expectations going in was that he was going to be nervous, something was going to happen, we were going to end up having to cancel the interview because his emotions would get too involved. But when I saw him and I showed him the questions, he was very open to them since they weren't too personal, and I was very, very glad about that. And my experience with it was that he was just incredibly, incredibly open. He didn't share anything personal, he didn't get into any details too far beyond what he felt comfortable to share, but it was still a very successful interview, and I feel like it embodied the entire experience that you have in the Vietnam War. And I think that, even he said, I wouldn't have done this if I wasn't comfortable. So I think that it's pretty great that he was able to do it without freaking out, because I honestly thought he would. And that's why we did it at his wife's salon, so that if he did have something, he would be able to go to her. So how he even fit in this project? Well, one of the wars that you put on our assignment sheet that we could do was the Vietnam War. So the fact that he was a veteran from that was perfect. And he was also very proud of his former post. He was incredibly proud. His pride in his country and his position is immense, and you'll see that in the interview. He is very passionate about this. So for me, I need someone with passion, and that made me super happy that he was such a passionate person. And so it fit perfect. Perfect. So surprised with the interview. I was so surprised about half the stuff he said, and I'm just going to read these off the screen because I don't remember them exactly. The first one that stuck out to me was, you learn how to respect life. And I didn't put the whole quote in here because I couldn't type it as fast as he talked, but it was, when you're young, you grow up fast when you go to war. You don't have a chance to be that young, stupid kid, So you learn how to respect life, and you learn that it's beautiful, and that it's something to be treasured. Another one is, I believe in peace, but sometimes to do that, you have to fight for it. So we all think that, in order to get peace, you have to be peaceful first. All these hippies and these new age kids are also concerned about peace. But he said in order to get it, sometimes you have to fight for it. And sometimes you have to show them that you will stand up for yourself. And you will be the better person. Another one was God, country, and the flag. And it was believe in God, fight for your country, and respect the flag. And so it was just, you know, those 3 little things. If there's any dying to do, let it be done by the enemy. That stuck out to me a lot. That was probably the one that stuck out to me the most, because it was like, you don't let someone get on your turf. You wouldn't let someone beat up your kids. You wouldn't let someone beat up your friends. So, you know, it's the same concept. If there's any dying to be done, kill them. Don't let them kill you. Something you gotta try to get through. Sometimes it's pretty tough. So the something he's referring to is the war. And, you know, sometimes it is tough. Sometimes you miss your wife. Sometimes you miss your home. Sometimes you miss not sleeping in a tent with guns and bullets raging around you. And so I think that was a big one for me. And this next quote was referring to the new system of how we get our soldiers into war, which is by the draft system, the volunteer, you know, you sign up, you're not automatically put in when you're an 18-year-old male. And he said, when we did away with the draft system, I think we created a problem that we have today, PTSD. He was one of the few soldiers that did not come back. He was not part of that 19% that came back with PTSD, so he was very fortunate. And he said that, you know, that he would have had it had he had to go back every 3 months, which is what he referred to when he was talking about the new draft system. Brought on by referring to PTSD, having no faith. And we're both Christians, so for us it was a very Christian-based thing. I made it as Christian-based as I could because I love God, and he loved God, and so I knew it would be easier if we brought God into it. And this one, which was really good, because of my faith in God, I wasn't afraid being over there, even when we were under fire. The fact that his faith in God gave him enough strength and gave him enough belief that that whatever happened, he knew where he was going. It made it easier for him, even when they were being shot at. And a couple more of the surprises were that he didn't break down. I mean, I almost cried, but the fact that he didn't, I was surprised. And the fact that he said what he said, you know, that he was so open, that surprised me. So my gains and losses and my recommendations. Some of my gains were I gained a knowledge of this war. I really didn't know anything about it, and I didn't know anything. I've never talked to a veteran, sat down and been like, what was your experience? I think that one of my losses was I didn't get as many details as I wanted, but also the questions were really general, and we didn't want to, you know, spark anything, so I think that was awesome how we did it. But I think that I would recommend this project to other people because, you know what, it was awesome, and it was fun, and it was easy, you know, not easy, but you get to sit down and you get to talk to someone, and you get to learn something about them, and even though it's not necessarily, you know, it may not always be the most interesting thing, but for me it was. I love talking about this stuff, but, you know, it may not always be the most interesting, but when you sit there and listen, it's like, wow. We are so fortunate to live where we live and to live when we live, and I think that that was one of the biggest things for me. And I believe that is all for you today, Mr. Bruff, and I will be posting the links up shortly. Thank you.